Right now, as you sit in that chair, something is happening inside your body that most people over 50 never get told about. Not by their doctors, not by their trainers, not even by the people who love them most. Your glutes, the largest, most powerful muscle group in the entire human body, are quietly, gradually, and scientifically shutting down. And the frightening part is not that it happens. The frightening part is how normal it feels when it does. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly fall. You don't feel a dramatic shift in your balance on a Tuesday afternoon. What happens is far more subtle and far more dangerous. It begins with a slight hesitation on the stairs. A moment of uncertainty when you stand up from a chair too quickly. A walk across the parking lot that used to feel effortless but now demands your full attention. These are not signs of old age. These are signs of glute atrophy, and there is a profound scientific difference between the two. The human gluteal complex is made up of three distinct muscles. The gluteus maximus, which is responsible for hip extension and is the primary engine of upright human movement. The gluteus medius, which controls lateral stability and is the unsung guardian of every single step you take. And the gluteus minimus, the deepest layer, working silently to keep your pelvis aligned while the rest of your body moves through space. Together, these three muscles form the foundation of your entire structural integrity. When they weaken, nothing above them stays stable. Your lower back compensates. Your knees rotate inward. Your hips tilt forward. And slowly, the architecture of your posture begins to collapse, not from age, but from disuse. There is a term in neuromuscular science called gluteal amnesia. It sounds almost poetic, and in a way, it is. It describes the condition where the nervous system, through prolonged inactivity and chronic sitting, begins to lose its ability to recruit the glute muscles efficiently. The brain, in its remarkable efficiency, stops sending strong signals to muscles it believes are no longer needed. And in a world where most of us spend 6, 8, sometimes 10 hours a day seated, working, watching, waiting, the brain receives exactly that message. These muscles are not needed. And so, it begins to forget them. What you are about to learn today is not just an exercise routine. It is a conversation between you and your own nervous system. It is a way of speaking directly to muscles that have gone quiet, and reminding them, with movement and intention, that they are still needed. That you still need them. And that it is absolutely not too late. Consider for a moment the design of the human body. For the vast majority of human history, our ancestors did not sit in chairs. They squatted. They walked miles across uneven terrain. They carried weight, climbed, crouched, and rose from the ground dozens of times each day. Every one of those movements demanded full glute activation. The body was designed around motion, and motion was designed around the glutes. Then modernity arrived. And with it, the chair. The seated position, held for long durations, places the hip flexors in a shortened state and the glutes in a lengthened, passive state simultaneously. Over months and years, the hip flexors become tight and dominant. The glutes, perpetually stretched and underused, lose their ability to contract with force. This is not weakness in the traditional sense. This is an adaptive response, the body reorganizing itself around the demands you place on it. Your body is always listening. The tragedy is that most of us don't realize what we've been telling it. After 50, this process accelerates due to a phenomenon known as sarcopenia, the age-related loss of skeletal muscle mass and function. Research in exercise physiology has consistently shown that without deliberate intervention, adults begin losing between 3 and 8% of their muscle mass per decade after the age of 30, and this rate increases significantly after 50. The glutes, being postural muscles that depend heavily on daily load-bearing activity to maintain their mass, are among the first and most dramatically affected. But here is what makes this conversation different from every generic fitness video you may have seen. The loss of glute strength after 50 is not simply a cosmetic or athletic concern. It is a direct predictor of fall risk. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death among adults over 65 in the United States. And the pathway from glute weakness to a fall is not complicated, it is mechanical, it is measurable, and it is preventable. When the gluteus medius weakens, the pelvis drops on the opposite side with every step, a movement pattern called a Trendelenburg gait. The body compensates by widening the stance, slowing the pace, and shifting weight unevenly. The ankle stabilizers become overloaded. The knee begins to track incorrectly. And eventually, on an ordinary afternoon, on a perfectly flat surface, the body simply runs out of compensations. And down it goes. Understanding this is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to clarify something essential. The work you will do today in a chair, simple, deliberate, seated movements, is not small work. It is some of the most important work your body can do right now. Because you are not just strengthening a muscle. You are rebuilding the neurological conversation between your brain and the foundation of your entire physical life. The first movement is one of the most underestimated exercises in all of rehabilitative science, and it requires nothing more than the chair you are already sitting in. It asks you to do something that sounds almost too simple, and that simplicity is precisely why it works so profoundly. Sit toward the edge of your chair, feet flat on the floor, roughly hip-width apart. Feel the weight of your body distributed evenly through both sitting bones. Now, without moving your legs or tilting your torso, I want you to squeeze your glutes, both sides simultaneously, as if you are trying to hold a piece of paper between them. Hold that contraction. Feel it. Breathe through it. Hold for 5 full seconds, then release completely. Then do it again. What is happening in those 5 seconds is far more complex than it appears. When you consciously contract the gluteus maximus in this way, you are doing something called a voluntary motor recruitment exercise. You are sending a deliberate electrical signal from your motor cortex, down through the spinal cord, through the motor neurons of the lumbar and sacral plexus, and directly into the muscle fibers of the glutes. You are, in the most literal neurological sense, reminding your brain that these muscles exist and that they are capable of responding. Now, add the posterior pelvic tilt. After you squeeze, gently tuck your tailbone slightly forward, as if you are trying to flatten the lower curve of your back against the back of the chair. This engages not just the glutes but the deep spinal stabilizers simultaneously, creating what physiotherapists call co-contraction, the synchronized engagement of opposing muscle groups around a joint for stability. This is the foundation of functional balance. Not one muscle working alone, but a community of muscles learning to work together again. 10 repetitions. 5-second holds. Done twice a day, this single movement begins to rebuild the neuromuscular pathway that chronic sitting has eroded. It costs you nothing. It asks nothing of your joints. And it begins the conversation. The second movement introduces dynamic loading, meaning, rather than a static contraction, we are now asking the glutes to engage through movement. This is where balance begins to truly rebuild itself. Seated at the edge of your chair, spine tall, hands resting gently on your thighs, you will slowly lift one knee upward, bringing your foot just 2 or 3 inches off the floor. Hold for 2 seconds. Lower it with control. Then lift the other side. This is seated marching, and its value lies not just in the hip flexors it engages but in the gluteal stabilizers it demands on the planted side, the side that stays down while the other side rises. Every time you lift your right foot, your left gluteus medius is working to keep your pelvis level and your spine upright. You are recreating, in miniature, the biomechanical challenge of walking. You are teaching your stabilizing muscles to hold the body steady while one side moves through space. For anyone whose balance has felt uncertain, this is the training ground. This is where the nervous system relearns what it has forgotten. The third movement is seated hip abduction. Place your hands on your outer thighs, just above the knees. Now, attempt to push your knees outward against your hands, as if you are trying to widen your stance, while your hands provide gentle resistance. Hold for 5 seconds. Release. This isometric press directly targets the gluteus medius and minimus, the muscles most responsible for lateral stability and fall prevention. What makes this movement particularly powerful for adults over 50 is that it requires no range of motion at all. The joint does not move. The muscles simply contract against resistance. This means it is safe for anyone with knee pain, hip replacement history, or limited mobility. The load is entirely muscular, entirely controlled, and entirely beneficial. Done in 3 sets of 10, with focused breath and intentional engagement, this single exercise begins to restore the lateral stability that makes confident walking possible again. There is something deeply worth reflecting on as we close this conversation. Not as a summary, but as a continuation of the thought that began the moment you pressed play. The body you live in right now is not the same body you had at 30. But it is also not a body that has given up on you. Biology is not fate. The research in neuroplasticity and muscle physiology over the last 2 decades has revealed something extraordinary, that the human body, at 50, at 60, at 70 and beyond, retains a remarkable capacity for adaptation. Muscle tissue can regenerate, neural pathways can be re-established, balance can be rebuilt, not in spite of age, but within it, through it, because of the wisdom that comes from knowing what is at stake. When you do these 3 movements today, you are not fighting aging. You are participating in your biology. You are having a conversation with a body that has carried you across decades of life, and you are telling it, with deliberate gentle movement, that you are still here, still present, still willing to invest in what comes next. The science of human movement is, at its deepest level, a science of relationship, the relationship between the mind and the muscle, between intention and action, between what we understand about the body and what we choose to do with that understanding. Most people wait for pain to motivate them. But you are here, right now, before the fall, before the diagnosis, before the moment of regret. And that is where real change lies. Not in dramatic transformation, but in the quiet daily decision to show up for your own body with curiosity, care, and consistency. 3 movements. A chair and a body that is already, even now, waiting to respond.